Um, Hallelujah. Greetings with peace to our deaconess, brothers and sisters who are joining us online.
在这里向在座的执事弟兄姐妹们问安。
And welcome to all of you. We'll take this time to give your spirit, give your time to join us in this fellowship meeting.
感谢大家能够抽空的来去参加这一次的这个团契聚会。
Today we are so privileged to have Sister Joan to share about this Covid-19 with us.
今天我们高兴有这个Joan 姐妹与我们来分享这个题目是新冠肺炎与我。
Yeah, I think Sister Joan is ready to have a presentation, and I'll pass this time to Sister Joan.
我们把接下来的时间交给 Joan 姐妹。
Joan, please.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Thank you, Deacon Yi.
谢谢于执事。
In the name of Lord Jesus Christ, begins our tonight sharing.
或者是顺便开始我们今天晚上的分享。
So as we are being informed before this, tonight we'll share our recent most popular topic.
就像我们之前已经安排好了的，我们今天晚上就会与大家来分享，就是一个现在比较热门的一个题目。
That is COVID-19.
就是这个新冠肺炎。
And we hope that through our tonight sharing, we can provide some of the insight or basic understanding for us regarding COVID-19.
那就希望透过今天晚上与大家的分享，能够让大家会比较了解关于这个新冠肺炎。
So we begins with the latest figure. Actually, this is today latest figures for COVID-19 cases in Malaysia.
那我们就以这个今天的最新的数据来去开始我们这个分享。这是今天的这个数据。
So the total number of newly diagnosed case is 17,000.
所以今天就是最新的确诊人数是17000多人。
And so in Sabah only today is 1,200.
那在沙巴就已经有1247人确诊。
And 11 of mortality or death cases.
有11个是死亡的确诊病例。
And our location, that is Kota Kinabalu, we are at the first place.
那我们现在所在的位置，亚比是在榜首的。
Okay, so followed by we have a basic understanding on the disease burden or how much this disease will bring difficulty or burden to us.
那我们现在先来去了解这一个病毒会怎么样的来去带给我们这个就是负担。
So here mentioned that mortality we concentrate on the mortality rate, that is death, that is 0.4%.
我们先来看这个死亡率是0.48%。
So it seems like 0.4 is not that significant.
我们可能会觉得0.48%不是一个很明显的一个数目。
But actually, it is 10 times of higher number figure of mortality rate compared with the normal influenza.
那这个比起就是普通的这个流感，它是有10倍的这个死亡率。
Okay, so now we look at the. Can you see my next slide? 可以看到我的下一个 slide 吗？有吗？
可以。
可以。
可以。Okay. So we look at the disease outcome of this COVID-19.
我们来看一下这个病毒所带给我们的这个结果。
So it is actually they took this initial 6,000 plus of cases as in this study.
他在这个研究当中，他是拿了6000多宗病例。
And then we can see that for those that is diagnosed as COVID positive, half of them, which is 49%, will presented with without any symptoms.
我们在这个6000多人当中，大概有一半的人是没有症状的。
And then another half of it is with symptoms.
另外一半是有症状。
And then for those with symptoms, and then 88% of it is presented with mild or moderate symptoms.
那在这个有症状的人当中呢，就有88.2% 的人是他的症状只是轻微的。
And then another around 11% of them will develop into severe disease.
那就有11% 的人呢，他是会有这个比较严重的症状。
And then the 88% of those that is with moderate or mild symptoms will subsequently recover.
那这些比较轻微的症状的人呢，通常他们都会痊愈。
And then followed by the 11% of cases, and then among it, 37% will develop into severe disease.
那在这个11%里面的37.7% 的人呢，他们会比较严重的疾病。
And then another 62%, which is majority of them, will develop into critical condition.
那就有62.3% 的人呢，他们就会到一个比较就很严重的一个情况。
And then in which they need most probably they might need ICU admission.
那到最后呢，他们会需要就是被放入这个加护病房里面。
But however, 65% of them will subsequent recover.
在这个里面呢，就有60多%的人，他们会痊愈。
And then 34% of them will die.
那30多%的呢，到最后他们会就是去世。
And then we look at the age in relate to mortality rate.
那我们来看，就是关于这个死亡病例里面的跟我们的这个年龄有什么关系？
So that is, we can see here, the more advanced or the older population, then they will tend to be higher rate of mortality.
所以我们看到越年长的呢，他们的这个死亡率会比较高。
So we can see here those that are 80 years and above, if they are diagnosed with COVID positive.
那我们可以看到，如果是80多岁的人，如果他们是确诊的话，
And then they 20%, which is 1 in 5 of them, out of 5 of them, will eventually die.
这个20多%，也就是说5个人里面有1个人就会死。
And then another aspect is we look at the underlying comorbidity of that person.
我们也要看一下他们自己本身有没有其他的疾病。
that is comorbid, that is they have those long-term chronic illness.
就是他们有一些比较长期的疾病。
So here we can see that the comorbidity that will put emphasis on is listed here.
那这里呢，就有一些是比较注重我们比较注重的一些疾病。
That is one of it we might miss out. That is obesity.
那这里有可能我们会比较常忽略的是一个肥胖症。
So you might think that I'm young and fit, and I got no any chronic illness, so I might not fall into this category.
那你是觉得我现在还年轻，我也没有其他的疾病，那我就可能不会被列入在这一个行列里面。
But the things you have to take note is if your BMI is more than 30, that is considered as obesity.
那我们其实也要考虑的就是，如果我们的这个身体质量指数它是超过了，我们是需要去注意的。
And here we can see also for those that is 60 years and above with comorbid, and then their mortality rate is almost 20%. That is also around 1 in 5.
那我们来看，如果是超过60岁，然后有一些隐藏的疾病，那它的这一个死亡率是16.19%。
Excuse me, it's not mortality rate. It's for those that might develop into severe disease.
对不起，不是说死亡率，是那些会演变成更严重的疾病。
And subsequently will bring into mortality.
那最后有可能就会带来死亡。
So here we have further understand. We try to further understand regarding this COVID-19 virus.
我现在来比较深入来去了解这个新冠肺炎。
So first we have to know there is a term called incubation period.
首先我们要来知道，就是它有一个词是叫做潜伏期。
That is the duration of infection to symptom onset.
这个就是在它就是这个被感染了之后，到这个它的症状发生的时候的一段时间。
Which means that this period of time, the person might be infected, but they got no any symptoms at all.
这个潜伏期呢，就是说这个人可能他已经被感染了，但是他还没有发生任何的症状。
So the average of this incubation period for COVID-19, it's around 5 days, 5 to 6 days.
所以这个新冠肺炎的这个潜伏期大概是在5到6天左右。
But it can extend up to 14 days.
可是也会达到14天。
And we have to know why is this incubation period so important for us?
我们要知道为什么这个潜伏期是对我们来说这么重要。
Because before the symptoms develop, the person that is infected by COVID-19 might have this probability, and he will have this ability to spread the disease to others.
因为就是他的症状，他在潜伏期的时候，他的症状发生之前，他已经是可以去感染别人。
And then so we look at this infective period.
我们来看这一个感染的这个时期。
So we start from the first days of symptom onset.
我们来看就是第1天的这个感染期。
So here the viral load, or we can say that as long as the person start to develop symptoms, their viral load or their infectivity ability is quite it's quite high.
就是我们可以看到，当这个他被感染的时候，他的这个他的那个病毒量是非常高的。
And even maybe 2 to 3 days or a few days, 1 to 2 to 3 days before, the person's infectivity is already start to rise up.
就是到了这个2到3天以后呢，他的这个
before it is 2 to 3 days before the symptom onset.
就是2到3天，他的这个症状开始之前呢，他就是很容易的去感染别人。
So and then so on the first day of symptoms develop, so until the period of around 3 days after symptoms onset.
那就是从他被感染的第1天一直到第3天呢。
So that period of times around so most probably usually on day 3 of symptom onset, the person might the infectivity of that person is at the peaks.
就是通常是在第3天呢，他就是在传染的他已经达到了这个就是传染的高峰。
So within that few days, if someone infected have contact with others, then most probably the person will spread the disease, spread the infection to others.
所以在这段时间呢，他们被感染的之后呢，他就能够很容易的去传染给别人。
And then up to day 5.
一直到第5天。
So usually for those like a mild or moderate disease that is not severe one, their infectivity period usually ends by around 5 days.
因为通常呢，如果它只是一些比较轻微的感染呢，它的这个感染力呢，在第5天就会结束。
So by day 10, here mentioned, usually those that are mild or moderate one, the virus is already unable to be cultured.
那在第10天呢，这个病毒呢，它就已经不能够的再去就是繁殖了。
Which means that if we do a COVID test for that person on day 10 of it started from its symptoms onset, so most probably the test will come out as negative.
所以通常呢，在第10天呢，如果他去做这个检验的时候，他的这个成绩呢就会是呈这个阴性。
Even though the test might be positive, but the person it's no longer infective to others.
就算是他的成绩是还是呈阳的话，他是已经不能够再去感染别人。
That is why our current health site usually the quarantine period is around 10 to 14 days.
所以呢，为什么现在呢，我们的这个隔离期呢是在10到14天
？But however, if someone's developed into severe disease.
可是呢，如果一个人呢，他已经演变成很严重的疾病
，so their infective period might develop up to day 15.
那他的这个感染力呢，可以一直延迟到16天。
And the longest recorded duration of infective period for someone with severe disease is 20 days.
那最长的这一个有记录到的这个感染的时期呢，是有达到20天的。
So, but this is case by case basis.
这是不一样的案例来说的。
Because there is another condition in which the person might be immunocompromised.
也有另外一个情况呢，就是如果这个人自身的这个免疫系统是比较低落的。
For example, they are pregnant or they are diagnosed with cancer and they undergo radiotherapy or chemotherapy.
就是有一些怀孕的呢，或者是一些有癌症的，他正在进行接受化疗的。
So if they have severe disease, their infective period it's might be extend beyond 20 days.
那如果是这一类型的呢，他们的感染力可以是超过20天。
So but however, usually the lab test, even though the person is not infective anymore, but the lab test can be still positive even up to day 90.
那就算是他已经没有感染力了，他的这一个检测呢，一直到90天都还是可以是呈阳性的。
So usually, if you want to know whether that person is infective or not, yeah, 翻译先。
如果我们要知道那一个人有没有还能不能够感染别人
，usually in their lab report there there is another terms called as CT value.
那他的这个检验的报告呢，其实还有一项就是CT 值。
So as the higher the CT value, the less infective is the person.
那如果他的 CT 值越高呢，他的这个感染力是越低的。
Okay, so this is what we have mentioned just now.
这是我们刚才所说的。
So we look at this graph. This is the zero figure 0 here means day 1 of symptoms developed.
这个第0天呢，就是这个他的这个症状开始。
So the infective period actually peaks and it's quite high even before the symptoms start to develop.
他的这个感染力呢，其实是很高的，就算是他的这一个症状还没有开始之前。
That is why it is almost half or 44% up to 70% of transmission usually happens during the pre-symptomatic period.
就是为什么就有44到78%的这个感染，它是在它的症状发生之前的。
So it is the person might be not aware of this infection. That's why they bring or infect others.
就是他还不知道自己已经被感染了，所以他就会去感染别人。
So next we look at the route of transmission.
接下来我们要看它就是通过什么管道来去感染。
So here the most well-known routes of transmission is through direct contact of droplet.
那最感染的方式就是别人的接触，或是就是通过他们的这个就是一定感染。
So usually, if one person is infected by COVID-19, the virus will be in the person's
那如果
lungs.
是一个人被感染了这个新冠肺炎呢，他的这个病毒是会在他的肺部。
So if that person is not wearing mask and have a very close distance with another healthy person without mask,
如果是说这个被感染的人和另外一个健康也是两者都没有戴口罩的话。
So the point of entry of this virus is usually through eyes, mouth, nose, and mouth.
所以通常这个病毒呢，就会透过眼睛、鼻子或是嘴巴进入我们的体内。
That is why if that person is not wearing mask, so and have a direct contact, so most probably and he will have a high probability of being infected.
所以如果是这个直接的跟另外一个人接触呢，近距离的接触呢，就是很容易被传染。
And another method is here, the one below the direct contact one, it is through direct touching.
另外一个方式呢，就是透过接触，就是摸到那个病毒。
Or we can say that if someone's infected with COVID-19 virus or have this COVID virus,
我们也可以说，如果是这个有被感染了的人，
if he touch on some of the surface,
如果是他有触摸到一些表面的话，
so theoretically, if the healthy person touch that surface again,
理论上来说，如果是另外一个健康的人也去触摸到同一个表面的话，
and subsequently touch their own eyes, nose, or mouth, then they will tend to get
那
infected.
如果这个人呢，他又去摸他的眼睛、鼻子或嘴巴的话呢，他就会被感染。
And other method can be through airborne or aerosol.
另外一个方式呢，就是通过这个空气。
So that's why we have to if airborne means even you are more than 1 meter distance, you might be still possible that you might be infected.
那这个空气呢，就是说，就算你与这个人是有一定的距离，你还是有可能会被感染。
So this airborne transmission is it's some kinds of being considered, or we have to assume it in which this kind of transmission can be happen.
我们呢也要将这个也要注意这个空气的传染，因为这个也是会发生的。
Okay, so key consideration is that is true if through direct contact.
那重要的我们要来去注意的呢，就是如果直接的来去接触。
So it's usually through coughing, sneezing, singing, talking, or breathing.
就是如果是通过咳嗽啊，或者是打喷嚏啊、唱歌啊、讲话或者是呼吸。
So because usually there is high viral level can be found in the upper respiratory tract, that is your nose or your throat.
那就是有很高的这个病毒量会在我们的这个上呼吸器官，就是我们的鼻子跟喉咙找到。
Okay, so in terms of close contact, in terms of close contact, or if someone is under a close and not an open, a closed area.
如果是一个人在一个非常密集的地方。
So which means that it is in a room or inside a building and the door and the window is closed up.
比如说，它是在一间关上所有窗和门的一个房间或者是一个建筑物。
So the longer duration the person inside that closed area, the higher risk there is higher risk of transmission.
那个人在那一个空间里面越久的话呢，他的这个感染的几率就会越高。
In addition, if there is activities such as singing, or the person is coughing or talking or breathing, of course we will breathe lah. So in addition of these kinds of activities, usually they will further increase the transmission rate.
再加上如果呢，他们在这一个地方呢，他们还甚至去咳嗽啊，或者是唱歌啊、讲话，或者是呼吸啊，就会更加容易的被感染。
And so this is the preventive intervention that I think most of us know of.
这就是我们可以预防的一些措施。
So apart from wearing masks, maintain social distance.
在除了我们要戴口罩和与别人保持一定的距离之外，
And always wash your hands with hand sanitizers or soap.
我们要时常就是用这个肥皂啊，或者是这个sanitizer 来去洗手。
And we have to keep on cleaning those surface that is frequently being touched.
我们要时常去那些尤其是时常会被触摸的这些表面呢，要时常去清理。
So if apart from it, if we know that that person might possible that he might be infected, but he's not diagnosed as positive yet.
那如果我们看到那些呢，他们就是有被怀疑已经被感染了，可是他的成绩是还没有呈阳的话，
Or we can say that they have a close contact with the positive cases.
或者是说他是与这些positive 的人有亲密接触的话，
So we have to try to identify and isolate and keep ourselves away from this kind of people.
那我们就要记得要去远离这些人。
And also to avoid going to crowding area or close contact setting, like a closed room or building or poorly ventilated spaces.
那我们要去避免去一些很多人聚集的地方呢，或者是这一些很封闭的一些空间，还有就是没有窗口啊，他们空气流通不好的地方。
Okay, so then we look at what is the signs or symptoms of COVID.
我们来看这一个新冠肺炎的这个症状是什么？
So as all we know that I think most of us we know that the basic symptoms can be fever, cough, sore throat.
那我们我们知道的最常见的症状呢，就是咳嗽、喉咙痛和伤风、发烧。
And then another one, which is quite a typical for COVID-19 infection, is loss of taste or loss of smell.
那最容易
典型
最典型的这一个症状呢，就是他们失去了味觉。
Why do I say typical? It's because if we find out that that person have fever, cough, in addition of reason loss of taste or smell.
那如果那个人呢，有咳嗽、有喉咙痛，再加上他又没有了味觉和嗅觉，
then we'll be more alert.
那我们就会更加的小心。
And then the other, maybe more severe symptoms can be having shortness of breath or chest pain.
比较更严重的症状呢，就是很难呼吸，还有就是胸口痛。
Or even include nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea.
或者是他有很想作呕或者呕吐和泻肚子的症状。
So since we are in this pandemic time, if someone comes to you with maybe only nausea and vomiting,
那如果这一段时间呢，有一些就是可能他只是有呕吐的感觉。
And he might tell you that, oh, I might contracted with some food poison or what.
可能他就只是会跟你说，我可能只是食物中毒而已。
But you have to be extra careful.
可是我们自己要非常的小心。
Okay, then the others, which means that apart from the normal cold, fever or cold or flu symptoms, a part of it, there is many other symptoms for COVID-19.
那就除了这些比较常见的，就是咳嗽啊、喉咙痛、发烧之类的，还有其他的症状。
So from here we can know that actually this COVID-19 virus can attack almost all of the organ in our body.
我们可以在这里可以看到呢，这个新冠肺炎的这个病毒呢，它可以攻击我们，就是差不多每一个器官，
including our skins.
即使是我们的皮肤。
So next we look at the clinical categories or staging.
接下来呢，我们要看这个病例的这一些阶段。
So usually if someone is diagnosed as COVID positive, they won't label them as COVID positive only.
通常呢，如果这个人是确诊的话，他不会说他只是确诊而已。
But it will be added up with which category of COVID-19 the person is in.
通常呢，他会就是说他是确诊在哪一组的这个新冠肺炎病。
In other words, means that through this clinical category, we can know that how severe is the person's COVID-19 infection is.
那就是通过这个被分出来的几组呢，我们就会知道这个确诊的人他的他的情况是有多严重。
So of course, Cat 1 is asymptomatic, like without any symptoms.
那就第一组的人呢，就是完全没有症状的。
And then category 2 is symptomatic, which means that, for example, they might have some sore throat, some cough or fever.
第二组呢，可能他就会有一些症状，比如说咳嗽、伤风，或者是发烧。
So it will just resolve like a normal flu-like symptoms.
那他可能过几天呢，他就会像这个普通的伤风感冒这样就好了。
In which without damaging the person's lung, which means that if we listen to the lungs will be cleared, or X-ray is normal.
那就是说呢，这个是没有攻击到他们的肺的。当他们看照这个 X 光的时候呢，他们的肺是没有被感染的。
And then the third category is with symptoms, and of course it affects the lungs.
那第三组的呢，就是他有症状，当然呢，他的肺部也已经被感染了。
And then the subsequent is Cat 4 is the person's required oxygen supplement.
那第四个阶段呢，就是这个人已经需要这个氧气。
And then the last category is those with multi-organ involvement.
那最后一个级别的呢，就是这一些人已经是这个病毒已经感染了他的很多的器官。
Okay, so next time if a person tells you that they have COVID positive, you may ask them, so what is your category?
那下一次呢，如果是有人告诉你他确诊的话，我们可以问他们你是到哪一个级别的。
So we can directly know how severe the person suffer from this infection.
那我们就可以从这边知道这个人这个病毒带给他的这个他的严重性是多少。
Okay. So we further move on to what is the test or lab test can help us or assist us in diagnosing COVID-19.
那这里我们会讲到有什么样的这个检测。
So I believe that if we mention on lab tests in COVID-19, we'll think of cotton bud.
那我们通常我们讲到这个新冠肺炎的检测呢，我们都会想到这个棉花棒。
So you're right. The cotton bud, we call it as a type of swab test.
那这个其实是对的，就是这个棉花棒呢，我们其实是我们叫做 swab test。
So this cotton bud or swab will be inserted into the area behind your nose.
那这个棉花棒呢，它就会一直被深入到这个鼻子后面。
That is why because just now we mentioned that the highest there is a high level of virus can be isolated in their upper respiratory tract.
对，为什么我们刚才说呢？就是很高的这个病毒呢，它会藏在这个我们的这个上呼吸器官。
So basically, there is 3 tests which is used for us to diagnose COVID-19.
通常呢，就要这个检测呢有3种。
So the first is, or we say that we commonly use is PCR.
第一种呢，最常见的是 PCR。
So this type of test is, we can say that it is quite the most accurate one.
这个呢是最准确的。
Which means that if the PCR is indicate that the person is positive, which means that the person is it's positive.
如果呢他的 PCR 检测出来呢，他是 positive 的话，那这个人就肯定是 positive 的。
And then another one is RTK antigen.
第二个叫做 RTK antigen test。
So this test we can say that it is not as accurate as PCR.
那这个呢，我们可以说它是没有这个 PCR 这么准确的。
However, it can still diagnose or detect COVID-19 virus.
是它还是能够检测到这个病毒。
But the good point for RTK antigen is the result can comes out very fast.
那它的这个 RTK 的最好处的地方呢，就是它的成绩是很快就会出来的。
Which means that if you want to identify in a short period of time whether this person is infected, most likely infected or not, then you can run this RTK antigen.
因为通常呢，如果我们要很快速的知道这个人有没有被感染的话，我们就会用这个 RTK test。
So this PCR and both PCR and RTK antigen is using the method of swab test.
那这个 RTK 跟 PCR 呢，都是用这个 swab test 的方式。
Oh yeah, forgot to mention that because RTK antigen just now we mentioned, it is fast because within 1 day or a few hours the results can comes out.
那刚才忘记说了，这个 RTK 呢，它很快，就是它在同一天或者甚至是几个小时，它的成绩就能够出来了。
But PCR usually it takes longer time, which it has to be we need to wait like at least 24 hours up to like 1 week or 5 to 7 days.
那这个 PCR 呢，它至少呢也要1天的时间，或者是有时候会到5天，或者是1个星期。
So this is the pros and cons for between PCR and RTK antigen.
这就是 PCR 和 RTK 之间的好处跟坏处。
So the other type is we call as antibody test.
另外一种呢就是 antibody test。
And this test usually you can run it yourself without sending this to the lab.
这个呢，我们自己是可以自己做这个检测的，不需要送到这个 lab 里面。
What I mean is, you can run it the clinic itself or the hospital the clinic setting itself can run it by the clinic itself.
那就是自己在这个医务所或者是医院都可以做到的。
So and you just need to wait for a couple of less than 30 minutes, then you can get to know the result.
这呢，在30分钟内你就可以知道成绩了。
And so but this one is we need to take note is the antibody test is not a confirmatory for a positive case.
那可是我们需要知道的这个 antibody test 呢，它不是就是可以确定它是不是真的确诊。
And this antibody test usually we are using a blood sample.
通常呢，它是用我们这个血液。
And if someone is antibody positive, it has to further confirm with either we have to confirm it with PCR.
那通常呢，如果这个人他在 antibody test 里面呢是呈阳性的话呢，他是需要用这个 PCR test 来去确定。
Because if someone is being infected by COVID-19, the bodies will tend to react and produce antibody.
那就是因为如果当一个人呢，他被感染到这个新冠肺炎的时候呢，他的身体会产生这个免疫系统。
So that is why antibody can be detected if a person's recently being infected with COVID-19.
那如果是这个最近被确诊的人呢，他们是能够知道他有没有这个新冠肺炎的 antibody 在里面。
However, we need to take note that this antibody test cannot tell us whether we are immunized or being protected by COVID-19 or not.
可是这个 antibody 呢，它 antibody test 呢，它不能够就是确定我们就是已经有了这个免疫力。
Which means that if I have antibody, I have COVID antibody positive, doesn't mean that I wouldn't be infected at all.
那不是代表我们在做这个 antibody test 的时候，我们是positive 的话，就是我是对这个新冠肺炎已经是免疫了。
It's just to tell us that we might receive the our body have already produced some amount of antibody.
这只能够说呢，我们的身体已经产生了一些的对这个新冠肺炎的一些免疫力。
Okay, so we just have a light touch on vaccine.
我们现在会来说一点点关于疫苗。
So as we know that this COVID-19 infection is very scary and throughout the whole world.
我们知道，就是这个新冠肺炎呢，在全世界来说是非常恐怖的。
So development of vaccine really makes us feel less worrisome towards this infection.
那这个疫苗的产生呢，能够让我们就是比较那些比较没有那么忧虑。
So we wouldn't go into details regarding vaccine today.
我们不会就是深入的来去探讨关于这个疫苗。
Because vaccine is another huge topic.
因为疫苗是一个非常大的一个题目。
But basically, we'll just introduce that currently Malaysia is using these 5 types of, is approved by Malaysia, in which we are using these 5 types of vaccine.
那我们只会说，这在马来西亚已经算是合格了的5种疫苗。
But those vaccine that we can be found in Sabah currently is these 2 types.
那在沙巴我们可以找到的呢，就只有这2种。
So first is as we know is Pfizer, that is from US.
那第一种呢，就是来自美国的 Pfizer。
And then another one is Sinovac from China.
第二种呢，就是来自中国的 Sinovac。
And both of them required 2 doses for a person to get immunized.
那一个人要免疫的话呢，他需要2个剂量。
And then recently, there is another vaccine reached Sabah and has already been used previously in West Malaysia, is this AstraZeneca.
那在这个 最近呢已经到达的，就是其实在西马已经开始用了的疫苗呢是这个 AstraZeneca。
In which we heard about it regarding clothing, blood clot, complications regarding this AstraZeneca.
就是我们很常听到的，就是会有这个血凝固的事情。
However, do not be too worried because those situations is only happen on certain type of person.
可是我们也不需要太过的担心，因为这一些情况呢，只会发生在某一种人的身上。
Generally, that is for those that is having clotting problem, their own blood is already having underlying problem.
那通常呢，就是对于那些他自己本身的血液是有问题的。
So do not be too worried.
我们不要太过忧虑。
So, which means that if you haven't received your vaccine up till now, most probably or in near future, you might get this AstraZeneca.
那如果是还没有打疫苗的呢，可能在不久你们就会接受这个 AstraZeneca 疫苗。
Because as we know that we cannot choose which type of vaccine we want to get.
因为我们是无法去选择我们要哪一种疫苗的。
Okay, okay. 黄执事，我想問，係咪到9點啊？
Well, you have another what? I'll give you another 5 minutes to wrap it up.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. All right. So, as a conclusion.
那总结来说呢
So since 2019, it has been like around almost 2 years times.
从2019年开始，其实到现在已经差不多2年了。
So this COVID-19 virus has been detected and starting in Wuhan.
那这个第一宗病例是来自武汉。
And then on 30th of January 2020, our WHO declared that this COVID-19 infection as a public health emergency.
那在这个1月30号，2020年呢，这个 WHO 呢，它是已经正式这个新冠肺炎呢是一个医药的紧急状态。
Okay, then further declared as a pandemic on 11th of March.
那之后呢，就在3月11号2020年就正式成为一个疫情。
So, as secular people or worldly people, do we have this kind of feeling of anxious? Of course, we have.
那世俗的人呢，会不会觉得会就是很紧张、很害怕？当然会。
So, and we still remember during the starting time, many of them are grabbing on masks and sanitizer.
在一开始的时候呢，这些人很多人都去抢购这个口罩啊，还有洗手液。
And those basic necessity.
或是一些基本需要的
，like rice or even toilet roll。
可能就是这些米啊，或者是甚至是这个卫生纸。
So the luxurious things like branded products or jewelry is no longer available.
这些比较就是名牌啊，或者是一些比较贵重的珠宝啊，已经是不再值钱了。
So as time passes, we might already treat this condition as a norm for us, a new norm for us.
那时间过了之后呢，我们会 把这个变成我们这个生活的一个常态。
Or we do just keep thinking when will this pandemic ended?
或者是我们会时常的想这个疫情什么时候结束
so that I can get back to my previous life and I can go traveling.
我就可以倒回我以前的生活，或是可以去旅游。
But have we do we know that, or have we ever think that is there any homework that God actually want us to learn from this pandemic?
那我们有没有去想过呢？就透过这个疫情呢，主耶稣有没有要我们做什么功课？
So one of it I just want to share is regarding reliance on God.
我要就是跟大家分享的，就是靠神。
So of course it's easy for us to say to rely on Him.
那当然呢，要依靠神。如果我们是只是说的话，是非常简单的。
But every day, looking on the rising of daily positive cases.
那每一天我们看到这个确诊病例都不断的提升。
Do we start to feel at least some kind of anxious or worry?
那我们有没有就是感到就是不安和担忧？
Or in contrast, we try to be calm and submit everything to God.
还是我们会反而就是比较平稳、平静，依靠神。
Of course, submission is easy to say, but if you really want to practice it, it's definitely not easy at all.
当然，如果我们说依靠神，只是说的话是非常简单的，当我们要做起来的时候，就不是一件简单的事情。
Just like Hannah, while she was barren, and after she prayed, and her face no longer sad.
就比如说哈娜，就好像哈娜来说呢，她是一个不能生育的女人，
After she prayed, even though she haven't get his son yet, but her face is no longer sad.
就她在祷告之后呢，算是她还没有得到她的孩子，她的脸就已经没有被戳了。
Okay, so we do not forget. So what we have to do is not to forget that. For this submission, actually, not to say that we forget the whole things.
不是说我们要忘记所有的东西。
But of course, we cannot forget regarding COVID-19.
当然，我们不可以去忘记这个新冠肺炎。
We just have to trust that and trust that there will definitely be a way. Okay, so the condition is for us, we have to do our best.
所以我们要做到最好。
That is, we have to practice all those SOP, and then the rest submit to God.
我们也要去遵守这个基本的标准程序，其他的呢，我们又要依靠神。
So, lastly, this is the Bible verses I would like to share with all of us. That is Philippians chapter 4, verse 6 to verse 7.
可以圣经章节就是腓立比4 6到10。
So I believe that all of us read here.
就能够阅读。
Okay, so thank God that my sharing today ends here. I pass my time to Deacon Yi.
接住今天的分享，我会把接下来时间交给李执事。
I thank God that we receive so much informative details from Sister Joan.
感谢主，我们从这个Joan 姐妹的身上呢，能够得到很多有用的资讯。
That we know this pandemic is going to be with us for quite some time.
我们知道这个疫情呢会跟我们一起非常长的一段时间。
So we don't know how and when it's going to end.
我们不知道这个几时会结束。
And the only things we can do is we have to trust God.
我们唯一能够做的就是要去相信神。
In fact, the summary that the Sister Joan has given on Philippians chapter 4, verse 6 to 7.
那刚才 Joan 姐妹给的这个总结呢，就是在这个腓立比书4章6到7节。
In which I would like to wrap this up and summarize the whole sessions of a presentation.
我就要在这里来给大家一个总结。
Yeah, of course, the Bible tells us in Philippians chapter 4, verse 6, it tells us not to be anxious for anything.
当然，这个腓立比书4章6到7节有告诉我们，就是应当一无挂虑。
Yeah, we have to trust God on everything.
我们要在凡事上都相信神。
Yeah, only we give thanks to Him.
我们要感谢神。
And make our requests to Him.
就是向神来去祈求。
And verse 7, it gives us the answer.
那第7节有告诉我们这个答案。
And that is the peace of God will surpass or transcend all our understanding.
那这个神赐出人意外的平安。
And if we put our hearts and minds unto our Lord Jesus Christ, I think our Lord Jesus will protect us.
那如果我们把我们的所有的心和意念都放在神的那里，他会保护。
We don't have to worry about so much on COVID-19 or anything that comes to us.
我们不需要就是太过的来去忧虑这个新冠肺炎或者是任何发生在我们身上的事情。
Yeah, after we have heard so much about the presentation which Sister Joan has presented to us.
在我们听过了这个Joan姐妹与我们分享的事情之后呢
And the conclusion is that in Philippians chapter 4, verse 6 tells us.
这个总结就是在这个腓立比书4章6节。
The only thing we have to do is to trust on Him.
我们唯一要做的就是要去相信神。
And the rest of it will be taken care of by God.
那其余的呢，神会去照顾。
I think because of time factor, I think we may have to skip the hymn singing and we can offer our conclusion prayer.
那我们因为时间的关系呢，我们就不需要来去唱诗呢，我们就直接来祷告。
Yeah, we will have this prayer and ask God to guide us.
我们在祷告中，我们求神带领我们。
And also we ask God to remember those who suffer in this pandemic.
我们也求神纪念这一个在这个疫情里面受影响的人。
And also we ask God and pray to God and intercede for those brothers and sisters who are not well.
我们也为身体欠安的弟兄姐妹来代祷。
And to supplicate for them, to intercede for them in this time of or in the midst of their sufferings.
在他们的痛苦当中呢，为他们来代祷。
Let us all pray one accord.
我们一起同心跪下来祷告。